So what are the benefits of intensive mode teaching? Well, time efficiency and productivity. Look, intensive mode teaching is not cramming, but this is something you can discuss. Increased student motivation and concentration, better opportunity to collaborate, more face-to-face and engagement, and importantly, better access for professional and postgrad students. As I said, it is not about cramming. In a paper by Mishra, he says it engenders a continuous learning experience. So what are the challenges? Well, it's really a yin and yang kind of thing, because basically every one of those benefits I mentioned has a challenge to it as well. When we're talking about motivation and concentration, for example, that means it's a matter of developing appropriate material, choosing an appropriate setting, looking at the social aspects that was mentioned, in collaboration, finding the best way to build teams. There's been a bit of research around that. You can have teams self-select, and there are pros and cons, or probably the most effective way is to pre-select teams based on student interests and backgrounds and academic achievement. Teams tend to perform best in this way. So, it's interesting to note that one of the real driving forces is this consideration about time. This was raised by an ANU College of Arts and Social Science paper recently. And in their intensive mode, they used face-to-face, online and blended learning. So they can all be pretty much a mix and match. It was really a matter for them of also choosing extension activities to use in the classroom. Now, some of the research looks at the efficacy of the method. So let's touch upon a couple of papers in the health science turf. At Griffith University, when questioning the impact of learning in a health science faculty with an emphasis on pharmacology, this 2013 paper summarized essentially by saying that student preference was improved. However, despite the fact that students typically had a lower GPA in this course, not sure why, they performed as well as students in the traditional mode of delivery. So they question whether this means this may be an appropriate pedagogy for improving student academic performance. Now that's one perspective in health science. If we actually jump across to Macquarie University, same year in chiropractic health, Willer and Linstead actually wrote a paper recently that had a very subtle heading. And in that heading, they pointed out that lower final grades but higher satisfaction. Now, of course, one wonders how we can have these two very different views. Perhaps it had something to do with the structure and construction of the course in question. Now, Copps from Manitoba University argues that the method does lead to stronger performance, but, and there's a big but, certain instructional and classroom attributes need to be present. Instructor enthusiasm, active classroom interaction, good course organisation, and relaxed learning environments. So only when these come together is the knowledge transfer, is the pedagogy more effective. Probably the best guide around the concept of intensive mode instruction or teaching came from UWA, RMIT, and the University of Tasmania. In this guide, they tell us that it's all about preparation before the class. So is there some synergy with the flipped classroom pedagogy, for example? It's important to build a learning community, to engage in group activities and use teamwork, to give a lot of feedback, formative and summative, and to choose appropriate learning spaces for the activity. Copps perhaps raises the point whether this concept of relax that I mentioned, this paper might really help understand that it's really about building the learning community in groups that gets that more relaxed environment. As I pointed out, UWA were one of the folks behind this guide, and it was really the physical sciences who did a lot of work in that area. Tyrone Fernando is a prof at UWA in electrical engineering. He delivers the process instrumentation and control course that he did once upon a time deliver traditionally and now intensive mode for very good reasons. Let's hear about his feelings about that course.
Well, this unit was originally delivered in the traditional mode, which ran for 13 weeks, 3 lectures, tutorial, assignments, in-class tests, laboratories, and also a final exam at the end. But with intensive mode, the whole course was delivered in 8 whole days, spread across 8 weeks. So 1 whole day a week, run over 8 weeks. Well, intensive mode I thought was very effective because students could learn a large part of the course in 1 whole day. And I felt that was way better than learning the unit in small chunks of 45-minute lectures.
So it's really about structuring the student interactions, and we'll now hear about how Tyrone has actually done that. And take note, he mentions student presentations. To me, this rings a bell about peer instruction, aka Eric Mazur's work.
So also it was important to consider that when delivering this unit in the intensive mode, that it's very difficult to concentrate for a long period of time. So it was not all about lecturing and the students sitting there and learning, because that was not definitely going to work because of the long duration. So it was absolutely essential to break it up. Each session, break up into several sections based on the concentration levels of the students. So I would start off giving the lectures, and then when the concentration levels were kind of dropping, you would break up to go into a different activity, for instance, a tutorial, and then start the lectures again, or go on to a different activity. Different activities could be group sessions where students can work in a group, just working on a specific task that I assigned them, or it could be a student presentation.
So what expectations do we have of you when you attend the symposium in September? Firstly, we've emailed you a couple of papers that we'd like you to scan, Mishra and Kopp's work. Mishra says that intensive mode delivery requires a paradigm shift for not only students but instructors. So the opportunity to discuss this methodology will really be great, and Sarah and Heather really look forward to doing that with you. Kopp's cites Daniel, who wrote that successful intensive courses are well planned, employ organised and structured activities, utilise a multitude of teaching strategies, and focus on learning outcomes and careful student assessment. Hopefully during the session at the symposium you'll have time to do that. To what extent could you see this working in your turf? What challenges do you think you might meet using this pedagogy? This promises to be an informative and stimulating session.